story about Sophia and her husband James, who lived soul to soul for many years. But the family idyll ended after one unusual incident. The wife of a rich man rescued the pregnant mistress of her husband, who slipped away on a business trip and barely called her husband by video link. Welcome back to Tale Track. I am excited to share a new story with you. Let's get started. The strongest family bonds often form when two individuals start their lives from scratch and, at a certain point, achieve stability, if not affluence. However, even here lies a danger once most life's challenges are behind them. A sense of complacency with earthly comforts and family values sets in, and humanity's inherent craving for adventure pushes both men and women into impulsive and irrational actions. James had known Sophia since their school days. Coming from a poor family, he diligently pursued his studies, even aiming for a free admission to one of the capital's universities. Moreover, James held the title of Candidate Master of Sports in boxing, which instilled in him a strong sense of discipline and responsibility from a young age. A tall, slender, dark-haired teenager and later a young man, he was very attractive in both face and body, which drew the attention of many girls his age and even some older ones. Yet, James, though never excessively chaste, did not exploit this attention. At the very least, he sincerely tried not to break girls' hearts on a large scale, honestly communicating his intentions without making false promises. On the other hand, Sophia transferred to James's school only in the 10th grade and immediately captured the attention of the promising suitor by being an excellent student, deeply immersed in her studies, and equally determined to gain free admission to a university. Consequently, she paid no mind to the local boys' affections and interacted with girls only within the educational context, deeming long, aimless conversations about trivial matters a waste of precious time. A petite, neat brunette with wavy hair down to her shoulders and slightly slanted, bewitching green eyes that looked at the world with a mild reproach from behind small, round glasses, she was extraordinarily charming when she traced her slender finger along the pages of a textbook, deeply engrossed in her studies, when James, for what seemed like the 100th time, found himself unable to focus in class. Captivated by this young creature, he decided to act. Simple advances were immediately dismissed. Sophia would often look at him reproachfully and walk away under a polite pretext. The experienced boxer would freeze in place when she responded to his supposed suave approaches with her signature teacher's gaze. James's efforts to woo the new girl would likely have failed had it not been for a stroke of luck. That day, the young man had a fierce argument with his father, who had come home drunk from the factory once again. James believed his father worked there only because he was incapable of anything else in life. Like many unfortunate people trapped in difficult circumstances, Max deeply resented his fate. He drowned his unexpressed pain in alcohol and often made life miserable for his wife and only son. As the binges grew longer and James's nerves became more frayed, his father's latest drunken return sparked a brief fight. The now grown-up son emerged victorious from this scuffle, while the humiliated father was sent to sleep on the couch of shame, a special spot in a small dark room where his mother banished him to regain some semblance of normalcy. Since the conflict was brief and did not satisfy James's need for adrenaline and the thrill of victory, his agitated blood roared for activity. Ignoring his mother's objections, he threw on a light jacket on that chilly September day and set out with a firm intention to find more adventures for his hot head. And he found it on a damp sidewalk near a grocery store. He collided shoulder to shoulder with another young man carrying a guitar case, who was unprepared for such aggression. The guitarist's companion, evidently another music school student holding a violin, was equally unprepared for James's appearance in their path. The two young men resembled each other. The guitarist, half a head taller, wore thick glasses, was extremely thin, and covered in freckles. In contrast, the violinist was sturdier, had a clean face, and seemed to have a more determined character than his tall friend. Despite their numerical advantage, the musicians were the ones being harassed, as the furious James only needed an excuse. Feeling strong, James voiced his not-so-original grievances, surprising even himself with his unusual behaviour. "No, not at all," the guitarist stammered. "He can't fight. His eyesight is poor." The violinist interjected, stepping forward slightly. "And who are you?" His defender or his lawyer, the boxer, took a stance suitable for a quick strike. But to James's surprise, the conflict was interrupted by the last person he wanted to see at that moment, Sophia, who had just exited the store with a bag of groceries in her hands. A smart girl, she quickly assessed the situation and, being quite brave, immediately stood up for the musicians. "Leave my brothers alone," she tried to sound intimidating, but it came off as more endearing. "Ivan can't fight, and Sasha doesn't know how. Find yourself some worthy opponents." "What do you mean I can't fight?" the violinist protested, but no one listened to him. "Didn't really want to," James muttered under his breath, realizing he was in an awkward situation. "You did. I saw it from the store. They didn't even move when you bumped into Ivan. You were the one charging ahead." At that moment, James completely lost his combativeness. Moreover, he felt a bitter, prickly lump of long-suppressed tears rise in his throat, a feeling forgotten in his harsh life. Naturally, James tried not to show any weakness, but his voice betrayed him, trembling. "Sorry. My fault. Just a bad day." Sophia found the sudden change in James's mood surprising. She didn't expect that such troublesome and quarrelsome boys were capable of apologizing, as her older brothers often exhibited unyielding stubbornness. "Did something happen?" asked a puzzled Sophia. "Just some domestic troubles," James waved dismissively. "Let me walk you all home. First, this neighborhood is unsafe. Second, I need to make amends." No need to walk us, he began to protest, but he was pulled back by the more perceptive Sasha, who understood his sister's state of mind better. Most of the way was spent in stony silence, with James carrying the bag and staring strictly at his feet. As they neared the house, Sophia spoke to her brothers. "You go ahead, I'll stay outside for a bit." "Are you sure?" Ivan asked, eyeing their uninvited companion with distrust. "Ivan, leave it." Sasha once again pulled his older brother towards the entrance, taking the bag with him. "They're good kids," James remarked. "But Ivan is very vigilant. He feels that he can do the least in an emergency, despite being the eldest," Sophia explained. "Why is that?" "His eyesight is rapidly deteriorating, even with glasses. Sasha practically attends music school because of him, to ensure his older brother doesn't get lost or into trouble. And he hates the violin, but despises the guitar even more." Sophia felt a sudden urge to share her secrets with James. "Can't anything be done?" "About what?" "Sasha hating the violin."
"No, about the eyesight. There's surgery, of course. But it's expensive. Our mum raised us alone and can't afford it. And your father, or is that a sensitive topic? He died many years ago. Pity it wasn't my father." "What? No, go on, tell me."
Unexpectedly, the conversation took a more intimate turn. James, feeling a sudden trust, recounted his misfortunes of the day and, without even noticing, shared nearly his entire life story while sitting side by side with Sophia on a bench, apologizing several times for his earlier aggressive behavior. Since that day and until recently, there wasn't a day when the young couple, and later the grown-up spouses, didn't have heartfelt conversations. Incidentally, James's career success was indirectly thanks to Ivan. He promised Sophia that he would earn enough money for her brother's surgery. Still a schoolboy, he got a job at a tire repair shop that hired teenagers. Realizing quickly that this wouldn't be enough to raise the needed funds, he saved his initial earnings and bought his first machine for tire dismantling and balancing, even though it was second-hand. This machine marked the beginning of James's gradual rise to financial success. By the time he reached the age of Christ, he had founded several large service stations, opened 2 gyms, and established 3 spacious auto parts stores. Ivan underwent a successful operation. Unfortunately, it was in vain, as he didn't survive past his 21st birthday, dying in a car accident through no fault of his own. Recognizing that his financial ascent started with Ivan, James built a magnificent monument for the guitarist in the local cemetery, and always considered his wife's late brother the unseen patron of his business. Only Sophia managed to get a higher education. However, this education proved extremely beneficial to the family business, as she became a finance specialist, even though she initially planned to become a biologist and study nature.
When James's business began to expand and financial flows became significantly more complex, her education came in very handy. After Sophia received her diploma, the well-established couple had a modest wedding. They then built a spacious, 2-story brick mansion in a classical style in the suburbs, surrounded by a large fenced area meticulously designed by landscape architects. Soon after, their first child, Ivan, named after Sophia's older brother, was born, followed by their daughter Vasilisa. James also managed to not only reconcile with his father, but also to forge a strong friendship. When he opened his first auto repair shop, he was forced to reluctantly hire his father due to a severe shortage of time and a dire lack of workers. To James's surprise, Max visibly thrived both in spirit and body, as he felt important and needed by his son for the first time in years. He left the factory, stopped drinking entirely, and demonstrated to James why his drinking buddies had always called him a jack of all trades. And a golden man thus, it can be said that James owed much of his initial success to the best repairman in the neighbourhood who, as the business grew, excelled in repairing both foreign and domestic cars. Unfortunately, Max passed away prematurely, having damaged his body with years of heavy drinking. At the funeral, James deeply regretted the times he had hastily wished his father dead. Funerals and the associated grief can significantly slow time, but they never stop it entirely. By the time the main story begins, James had already opened 2 branches selling auto parts in nearby small towns with little competition, necessitating periodic business trips to ensure everything was running smoothly. Sophia trusted her husband implicitly, believing that any suspicions could disrupt even the strongest relationships. However, as the trips became more frequent, unpleasant thoughts began to creep into her mind. The suspicions in Sophia's mind were not unfounded. She had an almost instinctive feeling, one common among women with green eyes. In the nearby town, a very attractive young woman named Tamara had taken up a position behind the counter of James's auto parts store. Tamara was a lively and cheerful village girl, a student at a local college, seeking ways to earn money in an unfamiliar city. Tamara was quite different from Sophia. She was larger, with blue eyes and blonde hair. She favoured simple yet eye-catching clothing and appeared mature for her age. Although James was initially hesitant to hire someone with no knowledge of auto parts, he reluctantly agreed to interview her, expecting little. To his surprise, Tamara demonstrated a deep understanding of automobiles, surpassing that of many seasoned mechanics. This expertise came from her childhood experiences assisting her father with repairing tractors, trucks and cars. Her father, a mechanic, took her to work as her mother, a dairymaid, was occupied until noon. As she grew older, Tamara was entrusted with small tasks, such as tightening bolts, and eventually her skills became invaluable, as evidenced when she helped fix a tractor engine before a sowing campaign, saving the entire village. James was astonished by Tamara's proficiency and immediately respected her, offering her a higher salary. Respect between a man and a woman can sometimes blossom into a more profound emotional connection, and this is precisely what happened, albeit unintentionally. Tamara, an energetic and dynamic girl, was drawn to older men. However, she had poor judgment in relationships, evaluating them through a male perspective due to her upbringing among men. This was evident in her recent painful breakup with Alexei, who stalked her and threatened her if she didn't return to him. Tamara didn't deliberately seduce James. Perhaps she simply needed the protection of a strong man. She allowed herself to joke and flirt with him, and James, possessing a good sense of humour and courage, responded in kind. Although he never intended to betray Sophia, a series of events led him astray. One evening, during a late inventory check with Tamara, it was already dark outside. Aware of her troubles with Alexei, James, with the noblest of intentions, decided to drive her home. For Sophia, the sudden change in James's demeanour was surprising. She had never expected that such problematic and quarrelsome boys could apologise, as her older brothers often exhibited stubbornness and intransigence. When James drove into the courtyard where Tamara lived, his protector mode kicked in, and he thought he saw a shadow recoil from the entrance and hastily disappear into the alley between the buildings. It was at the entrance of the typical 5-story apartment block, where Tamara rented an apartment, that a seemingly innocent conversation began. "This is where I live, James. Thank you." You're welcome, Tamara. It's nice working with you, but I'll make sure you get inside your apartment safely, just in case. You can call me Tamara and use you informally. All right, in an informal setting, I will. James agreed easily, always a simple guy at heart who didn't care for unnecessary formalities. Are you going home tonight, or have you found a place to stay in town? No, I'm not going home. I don't like night driving, and I haven't booked a hotel in the rush of work. If there are no vacancies, I'll sleep in the car by the store. It's not the first time. I often did that in the neighbouring town. Why not stay with me? I'm renting a 2-room apartment with a friend, but she's away visiting her parents. No, Tamara. I'm an outsider, and I'm not in the best hygienic condition right now. Oh, James. I'm not a city girl. I've been working with my dad on machinery since childhood, and I've been around men who didn't smell like roses. But my house is clean. I'm still a girl. And although the bathroom is combined, we're not teenagers. We know about physiology. You're not far from being a teenager yourself. Well, if you don't want to, that's fine. Tamara's voice carried a note of hurt. I understand you're used to different conditions. Tamara, what are you talking about? When I was your age, I was eating my last piece of bread without salt. Then let's go. Tamara clearly stood her ground. But on one condition: you also call me you informally in an informal setting. After that, James went to the shower. When the door closed behind her handsome boss, Tamara realised that there were no towels. The friend had taken them to her room. Hastily, she brought a large terry cloth towel to her boss, opening the door slightly wider than she had planned. This led to a spark, igniting a secret affair behind his wife's back. Did James regret his actions? The first time, very much. But as the situation repeated itself, his guilt diminished each time. With Tamara, life was simple and fun. Yes, there were times when she lacked manners and tact, but she was intelligent, having overcome many life challenges that disciplined and motivated her. This led James to genuinely believe that such behaviour was natural for a man, and that he could afford to support 2 beloved women who could coexist unknowingly of each other. Indeed, the mistress was well aware of Sophia's existence and knew that James had no intention of leaving his wife. However, she decided that casual, non-committal relationships were what she needed at this juncture of her life. Therefore, no matter how you slice it, it was only Sophia who found herself deceived. When passion blinds a person, they often lose sight of reality. And after 1.5 years of constant business trips, Tamara nervously disclosed to her lover that she was pregnant. For him, such news was like a bolt from the blue. However, since James had his own principles and outlook on life, he adamantly refused Tamara's suggestion to terminate the pregnancy. "Do you want me to become a single mother?" Tamara asked seriously in response to his firm refusal. "Why not? I'm alive. And I can provide for you and the child," James retorted. "For now, you're alive, James. Of course, may God grant you many years. But what if fate turns in such a way that your life is abruptly cut short? What am I supposed to do then?" James clenched his teeth, though he understood perfectly well that Tamara was right. "I'll leave for another city on a business trip for now, and there I'll think things over. I definitely need to tell Sophia everything, and then we'll all figure out what to do next. But for now, I need a little time for reflection." "Don't delay." "I'm worried," Tamara urged. "I understand, my dear Tamara. But I've never let you down. I won't let you down now." Chance holds tremendous power. It is through chance that great and terrible events constantly unfold in the world. Scientists make discoveries, century-long wars erupt, and people shape or shatter their destinies. By that time, Sophia's brother Sasha, despite his initial dislike for the music school, practically by chance became a professional violinist and fell in love with his craft. It just so happened that the violin ensemble Caprice, in which he played, was scheduled to go on tour to the city where James regularly travelled for business. By chance, Sasha missed the train after spending 3 long hours at the dentist's, and to rectify the situation he turned to his sister for help, who was an excellent driver and could easily take him to the neighbouring town. A series of coincidences and chance occurrences. However, as a result, Sophia arrived in the city and even found herself backstage at the local theatre. She was simply amazed by the virtuosity with which her brother performed his pieces. When the concert ended, Sophia, who used to enjoy exploring on foot, left her brother to celebrate his triumph with other musicians and set off on foot, navigating the area using a mobile map application to the place where the family's auto parts store was located, a place she had only seen in photos and financial reports. She didn't want to bother anyone, including her husband, who hadn't responded to her message about the unplanned trip with her brother for several hours. So, she simply satisfied her curiosity by taking a stroll nearby. When the fateful encounter occurred, dividing life into before and after Sophia was just about to play a prank on her husband. And to surprise her spouse, she turned on the camera on her phone to take a picture of the store and send the resulting photo to James to boast about her location. And it was at that moment that fate intervened, as the man who had been out of touch for several hours and Tamara emerged from the store and got into James's SUV. Yes, the windshield was lightly tinted, but the shading was insufficient to ensure complete privacy, as from Sophia's perspective, it was perfectly clear how passionately, like teenagers, the lovers were kissing in the car. Everything inside her turned upside down in an instant. It became so painful and dire that her phone slipped onto the asphalt, ringing loudly as it hit. "Ma'am, are you okay?" inquired a passerby. "No, just clumsiness," Sophia replied, taking the phone that the man gallantly handed her. She didn't want to create a scene in front of random people. Besides, Sasha was waiting at the theatre. That's why Sophia wisely decided to postpone any confrontations for later. The entire way back, she felt completely numb, nearly causing several accidents. Meanwhile, Sasha, enchanted by his success, didn't notice his sister's state for a long time, cheerfully chattering about the emotions he had just experienced. But then fraternal instinct prevailed. "What's wrong with you? You're not yourself," her brother exclaimed when her car's wheels grazed the curb and swerved dangerously. "Nothing, Sasha. I'm happy for you, don't lie. Are you okay? You usually drive carefully and steadily." "But now I don't recognize you. No, speak up. James is unfaithful to me." Sophia exhaled and barely held back the tears welling up. "I saw everything today and what? Divorce now." Her brother was shocked by this news. "I don't know yet, Sasha." I don't know anything. Her brother realized he needed to diffuse the emotional tension, and since he had vast experience in supporting Sophia, he began to state the obvious. But it was the right tactic, because this way, the suffering person simply poured out some of the negative emotions onto the interlocutor, internally agreeing with certain postulates. "Listen, little sister. Life is a complicated thing. It's full of injustice and pain, and I sincerely believe that even infidelity has its differences. Has James changed towards you?" "Not really. If anything, he's become more tender, I guess. I was wondering why, and it turns out he just feels guilty, trying to make amends, so he still loves you. And he doesn't want to leave. It doesn't make it any easier for me. You know, we creative types have a simpler attitude towards many things. We just understand better that people are imperfect beings. Have you talked to him about what happened?" "Not yet." "Talk to him, and then draw your conclusions. But know that I'll always be on your side, no matter what happens in this world." "Thank you, brother." "I never doubted you." Sophia sincerely thanked her homegrown psychologist, and for the rest of the journey she tried to avoid the sharp topic. The thought of talking firmly lodged in the deceived woman's mind. But it underwent a serious transformation along the way, because Sophia decided, first and foremost, to look her rival in the eye. Identifying Tamara was a matter of technique, and a task for a couple of hours in front of Sophia's eyes were all the documents of the company. Furthermore, the image of a young and cheerful girl who walked out of the store arm in arm with James was etched in her memory. And since surveillance cameras were installed in the out-of-town store, the wife easily realized that the competitor was a saleswoman at the auto parts store. From there, obtaining the personal address took just a couple of minutes, as all the employees' data were in a special database to which Sophia, as the firm's financial manager, had full access. Unfortunately, she was only able to send the children to their mother the evening of the following day. And during all this time, the betrayed wife inflicted real violence upon herself, trying not to give herself away in correspondence and in brief phone conversations with her husband. Despite the late hour for departure, she set off on the road, and upon arrival, when no one answered the intercom, she parked her car across from the entrance where Tamara lived, absolutely clueless about what to do next. The neighborhood of an unfamiliar city, in the fading twilight, immediately seemed very unwelcoming and dangerous. In turn, Tamara, after closing the auto parts store and stopping by a couple of grocery stores on the way, slowly made her way home, pondering her fate. She had initially planned to leave the child in any case, but she was incredibly relieved when, in response to her usual feminine deception and teasing, James, as always, showed himself to be a true gentleman. Lost in thought, Tamara slightly lost her vigilance. Therefore, she didn't immediately notice the subtle shadow emerging from the alleyway. When she did notice, it was too late. The former young man, with a drawn switchblade, pressed her against the entrance door. Told you wouldn't live. Growled Alexei. It's a pity you're alone. Otherwise I would have nailed you along with your lover. You coward, Tamara, replied contemptuously, and drunk, besides. And if James were here, even with your little knife, you wouldn't be able to do anything, yes, me? Oh, you, she roared, brandishing the blade. But at that moment the headlights flashed and an invisible saviour honked the horn, resonating with a powerful roar throughout the area. Alexei, not expecting such a turn of events, instinctively backed off. It was enough for Tamara to kick him with all her might below the belt and, twisting out of his grasp, darted towards the headlights. Some woman opened the door and yelled, "Get in, quick," and Tamara sat in the front seat. And when the door closed, the car quickly sped away. As Sophia thought, better safe than sorry, however, it was an unnecessary precaution, as by that time, the attacker had disappeared without a trace. Thank you so much, Tamara sincerely thanked her unexpected helper. You saved me, don't mention it. Tamara, the adrenaline washed away all the anger from the consciousness and soul of the deceived woman. Instead, there came a certain peace and complete acceptance of the difficult situation. Initially, the rescued woman didn't even pay attention to the fact that she was addressed by name. You not only saved me, but also my child. Sophia's eyebrows raised tiredly. Yes, I see. You mean you're pregnant? Yes, and does James know inside Tamara? Everything chilled for the second time that evening, but... How do you know? But with this naive question, understanding immediately came. Your Sophia. Tamara guessed who her unexpected saviour was. That's me. I'd say it's nice to meet you, but I'm afraid in this situation, a standard greeting would be inappropriate. No, why would it be? You're a young and beautiful girl, in the prime of life, so to speak. Moreover, you're carrying the continuation of my husband in your heart. As you can see, there are plenty of pleasant reasons to meet. And there's no talk of any troubles yet. As long as we keep ourselves under control. On the contrary, I like how you look and communicate, and if you were rude, I'd be offended. James is not to blame. It was me who invited him over. Look at that. You're even defending him. No, really. He spoke very highly of you and actually wanted to tell you about me. But he went to another city to gather his thoughts, and I really don't know what to say or do in this situation. Do you love my husband? That's a difficult question. Most likely I have a great deal of respect for him, feel a deep attachment and sympathy. But I honestly believe he's a very worthy man. I haven't met such men before. By the way, my ex attacked me. So, my dear, this isn't how I imagined our conversation going, and I certainly didn't plan on having to rescue you. Unexpectedly, an idea popped into Sophia's head. Listen, I've come up with something. The other day I wanted to play a prank on James with an interesting photo, but it didn't work out. How about we give him a video call right now? Why would we do that? We can prank him and clarify some questions, all without leaving the checkout. It's impossible to resolve a love triangle without involving the third party. Receiving an unexpected call, the third party was shaken to the core by this turn of events. What he hadn't expected to see, even in his worst nightmare, his wife and mistress on the same screen, became a reality at the moment when he was just drifting off to sleep in the neighbouring city. Gornosteyev didn't hesitate. Instead, he asked the women to wait for him in Tom's apartment and set off into the night to have a cup of tea and discuss all the pressing questions. Initially, the first meeting was optimal. There's no other way to describe this situation. James promised to acknowledge the child as his own and take both mother and child to the big city where he lived, to his own house. But at the same time, Tamara swore to cease any ties with Sophia's husband and not intrude into the personal space of another family. Sophia promised to try to digest the situation, if only for the sake of their common children. But naturally, she was strongly against the presence of the unfamiliar woman in the house at first. Despite this, they came to an initial compromise to live together for some time and then find common ground together. And until Tamara's childbirth, the atmosphere in the Gornasteevs' home was, if not tense, then strained. When the little boy named Max after his late grandfather was born, only the most dedicated people came to celebrate this event. Among them was Sasha, who had just returned from another tour. Luckily, Sasha approached everything simply, like a creative person. And he was quite a catch for his age. After all, Tamara liked older men. And Alexander, in his manner, managed to ease the situation and make everyone laugh at themselves. And as many know, a person with a sense of humour always attracts sympathy from others. And where there is sympathy, another tree of feelings can sprout, which happened this time but under controlled conditions. When the young people were left alone, all the problems somehow settled at once. Trust appeared in the family. Moreover, the family itself seemed to be cemented with additional blood ties in the form of little Max. Therefore, the family remained living in the same area, buying a plot of land nearby and building another mansion there. They didn't bother putting up fences, it was unnecessary. And when the artificial barriers disappeared, the mental barriers dissolved too, turning into a unique, challenging, but still such a special past.